Hello, hello. Mirka, how are you? Papa Dog and I making a video for you. It is raining outside, and here are my boxes already lined up. I'm gonna make myself a camera stand with that. That is about 1.50 meters high, and then I can have that in front of me. I don't have to hold the tablet in my hand. And I can do all kinds of things to explain. I can have two hands to do my gestures with, talking, gesturing all the time with my hands like eurythmia. So, and I can also explain certain yoga postures and stuff like this. So I'm gonna get into this more. That will help me as well, because I only do this when I'm making a video. I'm not even doing this much. When I get up, I do some stretching and stuff, but I become much more mindful and much more deliberate in the yoga postures and all of this, or even belly dancing, which I have made videos of in the past, when I make a video, because then I'm also explaining it, and then I get into it more in depth myself. So it's always the case when a teacher is really hungry for knowledge and is really interested in conveying that knowledge. I'm not a teacher, but just to explain this better. Um, I'm just I'm sister. Sister, sister Nikki. Big sister Nikki. So, big sister Nikki, who has come around and who has been through hell and back. So let's put it that way. Um, yeah, it's a learning process. We learn together. It's not a me telling anyone this is how you do it and that's gonna work for everyone. It's probably not the case. So I think, everyone can do these practices, but it's not written in stone, and it leaves room for variations, and every single person has to find out what works best for them. Maybe there's a specific trigger that works just right for me to draw out my personal pain and make it conscious and make it aware, so that it loses you know, its tenacity to jump up like a volcano. So, but for someone else, it might be a different trigger. It's always something else for each person. So we all have different triggers. We all have different pain, different trauma, and so on. But it all comes back down to, what we all share, what we all have in common, everyone, Bill Clinton, the Pope, you and I, and Hillary Clinton, and the libertarians. What we all have in common is we have almost all, I have to say, because there are some rare exceptions of people who had a real good childhood, who had everything, all the needs met of the babies. Very rare. Bindi and Robert Irwin are my prototypes for that. Okay. But the rest of us, 8 billion humans, we had parents who are who had been hurt, who are in a mental fog, not aware, not their fault. They are just passing on what they experienced, because they're unconscious about it. So what we all have in common is that hurt, is that the mother hadn't really been there for us. That's why I'm always telling all people out there who, all the natalists out there who are planning on having a family with with biological children, which I highly recommend not to do, okay, to everyone, because we have overpopulation, and it causes the kids suffering. This world is very harsh. So there are many dogs out there that people can adopt, that are waiting to be adopted into a loving home. A dog is equally good to your biological child and better. So that's my opinion. They're better. Okay. So, and much more easygoing. Trust me on that one. So, uh, I already had a guy say to me when we explained that to him, when we had Kenny, the Great Dane. The guy came to assess the house value for property taxes, and we explained. He said he has a baby coming, and we told him with a big fat smile on our faces, we are happy with Kenny. And it's so easy, and he's never gonna go to college, and he's not gonna get into drugs, he's not gonna get involved with the wrong folks. And the guy stood there and hung his head down and said, I think you're right. That's so funny. So, if you watch this video and you are planning on family, take this video here, take my recommendations before it's too late. Use birth control instead. Okay? So don't put bio children into the world. So, but anyone who is determined on that decision, if you are totally set on it, and I'm not going to take that away from you, I'm just giving you common sense here. I'm giving you that common sense that comes from deep love and compassion. So for anyone out there who is very set on getting a biological child, you have to keep in mind that we don't want to perpetuate that life cycle of neurosis. So when you bring a living being into your life, whether it is an adopted cat, adopted rabbit, adopted dog, adopted child, or your own biological child, it doesn't matter. Sentient being is sentient being. They all feel exactly the same. The same exact needs, the same physical sensation, the same, vulnerability for trauma, and so on. And they're even also vulnerable for insults. People think just because they don't understand the language, they understand language on a very visceral level, not in a cognitive sense, not in a sense that, that's a big misunderstanding that I see all the time here in the United States, that people think he knew better. No, he did not know better. Your dog did not know better of it. They do not understand your cognitive demands for him. Okay? They only understand, when you are angry, they sense that on a visceral level. They're very psychic also. They sense what people's intentions are. Very important to keep this in mind. So when you bring a child into, or an animal child, or a human child, or an adult animal, or an adult retarded human, or if you have someone with dementia, whoever you are a custodian of, whoever you are a caregiver for, any sentient being, even plants have senses. So, but that's further out. But I'm talking right now about the really highly sentient beings, like dogs, humans, horses, rabbits, etc. So when you bring that being into your life, you have to give that being your 100% unconditional love and attention and care and mindfulness. And you have to put this living being before yourself. Okay? You have to be altruistic for that living being. That has to be your number one priority, that it is for me with him. Okay, I give my life for him anytime. I would fight to the bone. It would be a bloodbath if I had to do it to save him. I would do anything for him to save him from suffering. Okay. So, and that is what I wish to see in the whole world. I want all people out there, you know, everyone, I want to become aware of this, that we have to be altruistic for the other being, you know. And that also extends out. It extends out of our family as well, you know. The family is priority, and then it fans out to the outside world as well, you know. We are also responsible for the planet. Each person is responsible for what's happening on the planet. Okay. And even people who say, oh, I didn't know about it, you are also responsible, because you have the responsibility to inform yourself in a very open-minded and honest way, not biased from some kind of pre-consisting idea or religion or family value or whatever your parents put into your brain, or what society thinks of you, or what society or Hollywood expects, you know, all of the, put that aside. That has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. So, and this pondering is already a form of meditation. And a meditation, any meditation, is also self-empowerment. And that's what I want to put an emphasis on in this video. Self-empowerment. Making artwork is self-empowerment. Breathing, you know, making sure that your spinal cord is arched and straightened, and the shoulders are put back, and you flatten your stomach, your belly in, and chest out, and shoulders back, straighten. You know, when we do this here, not to crystallize ourselves into a specific, you know, like some kind of concretized posture, but being flexible at the same time, and just, you know, testing it out, how it feels, you know, moving your upper body around, and while you sit comfortably on a comfortable cushion or also recliner chair, whatever, but make sure the back is straight. Breathe in through your abdomen all the way through the entire lung coordinate space, into every single lung epithelium, I think they're called, you know, microvilli that take in the oxygen and give the capillaries the oxygen, so that the blood can refill itself with oxygen and fresh air. So very important. It's a constant reminding process. I have to do this myself. It's a, you know, one thought can already make me hunched over, you know, one difficult thought, for example, and that can be very quick, you know. So just bring it back to it, you know. Say to yourself, okay, you had a difficult thought, which comes from, you know, striving, which comes from self-image, which comes from I need to, I have to. That we want to bring back to an equilibrium of I don't have to do anything, you know. I just am here right now. I am that, said Nisargadatta Maharaj. You are that. You are that, what you are just right now in this now moment. And that's beautiful, that's wonderful. And you are you, and my brother Fabi, you are you. And no one can take that away from you. That's the beauty of it. And you are there, and that's great. And that's perfect. And there's nothing wrong with it. If you think there's something wrong with where you are, then that comes from self-image and ego and social interpretations of what society might expect or might not expect or whatever. That's all has nothing to say to us. There's no relevance to our lives at all, or what someone else, or what a girlfriend expects, or whoever we want to be with. No. Why do we want to be with that person? Why does that validate us? So all of these questions are very important to ask, and then come back to this state of I am that, and I am empowered. I am empowered just right there where I am, wherever I am. If there's jealousy, yes, that comes from unempowerment. But if I go into resistance against the jealousy, then in that moment I am even more unempowered, because then I'm trying to shadow something over. Now we need to bring that to the light. We need to bring everything to the surface. Everything. The garlic of truth has to bring everything to the surface. It's the truth. How can we heal it if we don't bring it to the surface? If it's unconscious, it takes over our actions. It takes over people's minds, and that can take on some epic proportions, as we have seen already, with all kinds of people, what they do to other living beings out of this state of total unconsciousness. And total unconsciousness, where the self takes over, the ego, that's where the compassion becomes suppressed. So the moment we open ourselves up again to it, compassion will come up. And empowerment is compassion. Compassion is empowerment. That's true power, not over someone. That's a big misunderstanding here in the United States, particularly. That I see all the time. I see very unempowered people who want power. That's not power. That's something else. That's a neurotic ego belief. That has nothing to do with power at all. Someone who wants power is unempowered. The very act of wanting power is an act of unempowerment. If we want power, real power, that means we don't want anything from anyone else. We can leave other people alone. We can give other people space and beingness. We can leave them where they are. We don't need to covet. We don't need to win them over. We don't need to do anything with them. They do their own thing. You do your own thing. You are here. You are that. You are empowered. You don't need him or her or whatever. So this is the moment jealousy comes up. I accept it. That's empowerment. So then in that moment where I do not resist this emotion anymore, some people resist emotions of resisting emotions of resisting emotions. Sometimes it's 10 times compounded. And that's when it takes on those monstrous forms. When the fear of the fear of the fear comes up, and the suppression of the suppression of the suppression happens. Like mega compounds of thinking about what the other person is going to perceive about oneself, then having to counteract this, and then having to counteract the counteraction, because they are afraid that the other person is so intelligent that they will see through us, and then they might laugh. The whole thing needs to be dissolved instantly. This entire card house of compounding. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks or what they, if they think you're just doing this for this or whatever, and then they go, ha ha ha, I got you, whatever. It doesn't matter. It has no relevance. That's their problem, not yours. And that's why I think it's very, 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 very healing to do videos on YouTube. It has helped me tremendously, tremendously. I cannot even put it into words how revolutionary YouTube is on all these social levels, and psychology, on metaphysics and energy healing, on all of those, on information gathering, real practical information for holistic living and gardening and how to really handle planet Earth. That has come about through YouTube. And it is an amazing, YouTube is the most amazing technological breakthrough. People don't seem to realize, they take this all for granted, but it is an amazing, I knew this was going to be the case before I got my first computer, before I went on the internet. So somewhere in the early 90s or so, I already knew that once we get all of this rolling, and we get the communication rolling worldwide, then things are going to be opening up, and truth will come into the most dusty enclaves of mind, social, dusty, religious enclaves that are out there in the world, wherever that is, whether it's in the Middle East or in Utah or wherever in South America, in some kind of cult. People will see the truth, and then they will question their cult leaders or their gurus or their popes or whatever, or their sheiks or whatever. It's not chic. So religion is not chic. So it is what I find chic and luxurious is empowerment, is being able to breathe in that very moment that you are in right now. Helping animals, PETA, that's empowerment. Conspiracy theories against any kind of group that are out there, they come from the corporate agenda, because the corporate agenda wants to get rid of anyone who's caring and any group who's caring, because they don't want to be bothered with their production line, their market perpetuation. They don't want that to be interrupted. Yeah, they don't care whether that market perpetuation is hurting someone else. They want to keep that going because they get money from it. And humongous money, okay? Humongous, on cost of others. And that's what I'm talking about. That comes from unempowerment. Greed comes from unempowerment too. This constant feeling, I need to pick up a penny, and if I don't do it, Bill Gates will do it, and I need to make more and more and more and more, and I need to always, it's always there, feverishly thinking about, people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and so many others, the CEOs of Lockheed Martin, and it's the truth. If you guys want to empower yourselves, these act outs are not going to give you that, okay? It will always leave you empty-handed emotionally. And then you think you need to do more of the greed and more and more and more, and you can't see the other. You actually kid yourself into thinking, no, you're helping, but you're just doing this for yourself. whatever you're doing then, getting involved with politics, again, for your own personal vested interest. So that needs to be dissolved. And once you dissolve this, once you empower yourself, if you have such a tremendous financial leverage that you have gained, you have a tremendous responsibility with that. And you should put that wealth into helping. That doesn't mean you have to live less luxuriously. No, not at all. Quite the contrary. Some of these people don't even live luxuriously. I live more luxuriously probably than they do. They don't even grant themselves a break. They don't even breathe. So they drown their coffee in the morning. I don't know what they do. They drink alcohol in the afternoon. To me, that's not luxurious. That's not the art of living. The art of living is, and also, taking Viagra and all of these kind of things that people are doing, all this overstimulated, what society thinks of once from then, you have to be virile, manly, and whatever, these images that are constantly being projected on people, and people projecting that's from society into themselves, and having all these expectations and all of this. We don't need to be. You don't need, if you are 80, you don't need to do it anymore. Sorry about this. But there are other values that are so infinitely more important than your image to the world, and your appeal to other women and whatever, other people. So what's important is this true empowerment. This true empowerment of, I am here, this is what I'm feeling, for whoever is out there, an 80-year-old man who has trillions of dollars, and the women don't want him anymore, then he goes under the knife. I want this person, whoever these people are, sit down and let it go. Let it go. Let go of this constant striving and desiring and constant self-image feeding. Let go of it. Protect your children and grandchildren, or whoever, your friends, or provide for Sea Shepherd or Peter, if you don't have family. Make sure the others are taken care of. Then live in this caring. Live your retirement in this caring feeling, in this altruistic feeling, in this feeling of, yes, I want to do good, I want to help, I want to give. That feels good. It feels good to give. It feels good to contribute something wonderful to the world. It feels very, very good. And come out of this, all these people out there, come out of this craving and wanting more, needing more power, more money, more recognition, this or that, more success, with more books published, whatever, So come out of that and be you and see the other. It's what Jiddu Krishnamurti said. Do you actually hear the bird cry in the tree? Do you hear a child weep? Do you hear a man cry in pain? That's what he said. Do we actually hear it? Or are we so busy with our self-images? Are we so over covered with the self-image act outs of accumulating more and more and more and more of this or that, and not seeing that other living being in the meantime. And that is what's happening in the world, okay? And that's why this true empowerment is so utterly important. I am empowered just the way I am here. My jealousy comes up. You know, Tony Robbins, I will never forget. I listened to Tony Robbins' 30-day audio cassettes several times over. I had those audio cassettes, just the regular cassettes, you know, that you put into a cassette player. And it did magic for me. It really did. And now he has CDs. You can get the CD programs. I'm not sponsored by him or anything. I support him wholeheartedly because he is amazing. Yeah. So, what's dangerous, though, I have to warn people about that. What's dangerous is that when he is not the one who is in charge of certain programs, when he gives that over to someone else, certain educational program like the fireworks in particular, or there was a case where someone had people go into sweat lodges and people died there. That was someone else. But some people burned themselves on those coals, because also in the Tony Robbins seminars, because he had given the teaching for those classes over to someone else. And all these people started suing him, and yeah, that's pretty scary. He can lose everything then, yeah. So then he can't help anyone anymore. That'd be really catastrophic. And I understand both sides again in this situation. I'm not very quick to take someone's side over someone else, because you have to look at both sides always, at all times. But that's why I say, the expert should not be so quick to give his seminars over to a different instructor or tutor or whatever, so, or professor or whatever. So that should be monitored better, and those kind. So but that's just, people need to know that they need to be careful when they enter into a program like this. I would never do a firewalk program, because I can do empowerment, self-empowerment, in a much safer way, sitting here on my cushion instead of trying to be some kind of fakir who sits on fire coals or needles or whatever. So in order, or sits and meditates in freezing temperatures like Wim Hof is doing and some Buddhist monks. So why go to those extremes? That's my question. We don't need to go through those extremes. So, but the Tony Robbins audio seminar tapes and CDs that he has there for people to get, those are highly, 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 highly beneficial. I recommend to people to listen to those, to listen to one tape every day for 30 days. There's a sequence in it, one builds up on the other, and that's very, very powerful and very potent, what he has to say. And I learned a lot. And he was talking about an in-person seminar. He gives these in person. They're very expensive, though. I can't afford it. But there was a woman in his seminar that he had. I don't know where that was. Maybe LA. There was a woman. She was wearing a wig because she had been pulling her hair out. And she had been doing this because she was traumatized by sexual abuse from her father as a child. And she told this entire story. And she was also very overweight, and that also happens a lot to women who had been sexually abused. It's very, 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 this is happening very often, very often. So often, I don't know, I would roughly estimate 90%, yes, of humanity. And in some cases, it's very early childhood, and the earlier it is, the more traumatic, and the more devastating it is gonna be. For the more devastating is gonna be the mental illness that will come out of it. So people need to be aware, fathers out there need to be aware what if you project such type of things onto your children, you know, be aware of what you're doing. Even the projection alone is traumatic already because it's happening on an energetic level. But if you touch your child that way, you are you are a criminal, and you are causing not just death, but you cause a lifetime of unimaginable suffering. But for the people out there who had been affected by this, you can empower yourselves. I am empowering myself. We can all do it. It's doable, absolutely. There are so many different approaches. I recommend to people to look at every one of them and come to your own conclusions, whether, this could be helpful for you or not. Look into all. It really is. Empowerment is when you go to work and when you do your own legwork, when you become your own researcher, when you really explore things, you read everyone else's work, you do your own research within yourself, you test yourself, always keep in mind the others are priority, the safety of others always priority at all times. But within this realm, we can test ourselves, we can test things in a peaceful way, and we can move forward with our knowledge and our healing process at all times. So this woman in the seminar of Tony Robbins, she said that she can't find a boyfriend because of the way she looks and all of this. And she was very devastated, very depressed. And he said to people, I want you to empower yourself from within. And he did this meditation with her on stage. I'll never forget, this is so powerful. And he said to the men in the front rows to go ahead and throw insults at her. And they didn't want to do it, but then they finally did it because they thought, okay, this is what we have to do. This is an exercise. And they did insults, and he said, while they're doing the insults, do your empowerment. Breathe and do your empowerment as much as you can. And just envision yourself being completely empowered, no matter what the other people say. You are you, and you are precious. I am me, and I am precious. I am me, and I am precious. I am me, and I'm precious just the way I am. And she just kept running this program through and through and through as they are hollering insults. And after that session, he said to her, and now tell them how you feel. And instead of, hitting back or getting mad at them, which is more unempowerment, instead of doing that, she said to them, I know I look bad on the outside. Right now, I had let myself go, whatever. I had wear a wig, and, she had to pull her wig down. She had almost no hair left. Was bald because she kept pulling her hair out. That's how painful sexual abuse is. And she said to them, if I might look bad on the outside, but deep inside of here, there is a very precious person. There is a very deeply caring person. There is a child that wants to be loved. There's a child that wants to love. And I am valuable just the way I am. It's very powerful. It shakes me up, just thinking about it. I'm very powerful, and I am very loving, and I'm very giving, and I'm very precious. And they gave her hugs, and they thanked her, and they told her that she's precious. And so that was a wonderful, wonderful insight for her to have. And just wanted to also mention about Mada, Eliza Mada, or Eliza Mada Dalian, as they call her here in the United States. She's a therapist, and I had a session with her. I paid a lot of money for it. Could have bought an industrial size washing machine for that session. Would have been much more practical. Because the session caused me, actually, it felt like my lungs were bleeding after that session. An hour and a half of intense breathing, power breathing. But, so I don't agree with that approach at all. But she did impress me because for some people it might be very useful, it might be very helpful. I had already done primal therapy, so I was already doing that on my own, and I was doing it already much better than I was with her in the session. I was just wanting that session with her had something to do with unempowerment. It had something to do with all kinds of different emotions. I was in love with that James Hetfield in 2010. Those kind of things. I thought I was never going to come out of this anymore. I thought I was in some kind of trap. It was very bad. But, it was good to talk to her. It was good to talk to someone who understands all of these things. But the breathing exercises that she did with me, they were not helpful. Okay, they were causing my lungs to get highly irritated. And my lungs were already a little bit on edge. I had bronchitis and stuff like this. I was already having trouble breathing and all those kind of things. But I saw a session, so I don't recommend these types of therapies. So with those people, Tony Robbins' seminar tapes are good. Mada, you can watch her sessions that she gives. I would not recommend taking those sessions necessarily, because I find all of these different, it's not against anyone personally, I just find all of these different approaches that you see there very lopsided. So in order to get a very wholesome therapy, it would require a combination of these approaches, including primal therapy, including meditation, including art, and all of this. So all of this combined, and it needs to be combined in a very delicate balance and in a very potent, potentialized way, where each approach potentializes the other. So and cognitive, very important. We can't be ignoring the cognitive part. We have to, common sense, how we eat, a complete holistic approach is necessary for that. I haven't seen it yet. So, but that's why this is our challenge, this is our task, to study this, to research it, to come to our own conclusions, not to be adhering again to this or that and say, I am a Reichian, or here, I'm a Lemurian, I'm a Pleiadian, but to be you, that's the empowerment key here. Be you. You learned about this, go to the next one, learn about this. Then forget about it and create your own approach and help people that way. As you are helping yourself, we are helping others. That's how it works, really. That's the wholesome way of approaching this. So, but the session that I observed on YouTube also, that did impress me very much, was a session with a woman who obviously didn't have lung problems or anything. And so she was doing these power exercises with her, where she was doing power breathing, kind of like hyperventilating. I don't recommend it again. It was just for her, it happened to be this at this one time, was particularly, you don't want to do it a whole lot. So, but for this woman it was helpful, because I could see and hear in the way she was breathing that her energy shifted from total meek and unempowered to a tremendous volcano coming up suddenly in her. And I have to watch the time. And this volcano coming up, and suddenly she has shifted to this, or suddenly with this empowerment that she started to experience, came all kinds of anger, and that anger is good. We should not suppress anger. Anger is very good. It is an intermediate state of healing. So we can't be skipping that. It's very important. When the anger comes up, not act it out on anyone, but to feel it and to recognize what happened. You know, they had been playing with me. They had been playing out, acting out their own thing on me, and use my meekness, whatever. So that brings up anger, and we need to allow that. We need to allow that to come up. And in her case, she was doing it with the breathing, but I recommend to breathe slowly in and out. And you can do it through that as well in a much more wholesome way, because the hyperventilating is not good for us. That can even cause bleeding in the lungs. So we want to breathe slowly in and out, empower ourselves, and also forgive others all the time. Like, it's kind of strange, that word, but what I mean is, let go, let the others be. Yes, they are doing the act outs and so on. Yes, they have used my meekness. Yes, they have stepped over the line. That's their problem, though. It's not my problem. Yes, it happened. Now I can feel anger. Now I can feel sadness. Now I can feel like I had been wronged. Yes, it feels bad. Let myself feel it, and I let it go through, all the way through. And as I feel it, also, feel the empowerment of this is just what it is right now. And I am precious. And I sometimes kiss my wrist. You can kiss your hand or thumb, or, it's just give yourself an expression of self-love. I do this often in the stores because of the energies of people that I encounter, that I don't know whether they are directed at me or not. Some of them might be, some of them might not, but just I pick up all kinds of energies all the time. I sense it. And it's very, very exhausting, and it's very, very, very rough. So that's why I have to always standing there in front of the refrigeration and thinking the world is a big refrigerator, but you are precious. So this is very helpful to do. So be good to yourselves. Always be very mindful of your health, of what you eat, how you breathe, what you watch on YouTube. Do we watch something entertaining that might have violence in it, or are we watching something that is empowering and wholesome? Always keep that in mind. It's very important what we observe and watch on the internet, and how we watch it, with which intention, whether we're conscious doing it or unconscious. When we're unconscious, the negativity on the internet can be very detrimental for our mental health. So it's very important that we watch empowering things at all times. And if we watch something, maybe a documentary that contains some violence, how do we watch it? Do we watch it with an open mind and with an alertness, with an awareness? And how do we process that information? Do we cover it over, or do we talk about this with someone else? Which I think is very important. So, and I recommend to people to never watch horror movies or any kind of violent film, because that comes straight from the unempowerment of those people who made those, and it's just negativity, and it's very detrimental for our mental health. So This is not about you're a sissy or whatever, you know. It is about we want to empower ourselves. We don't want to continue with the negativity. It's very, very, very important. So anyway, for that woman, the breathing session was very, very helpful, and she had a lot of insights and realizations through this process. But we can do it through slow breathing, which is much more beneficial, and just letting the emotions be, just letting it be whatever there is. When the thought comes up, the thought wants to come up because it wants to communicate something to us. It's the unconscious constantly wants to become conscious. This is biochemistry, you know. It wants to become conscious so that it can heal. The body is in a constant movement forward towards healing itself all the time, non-stop. The brain too, the mind, the psychology, biology, all of it. It's all interconnected also. So yeah, and yeah, a quick word about primal therapy. That has been a tremendous phase in my life, you know, particularly for 2 years when Dr. Arthur Janov himself was teaching. Before he retired, I got to see him. I got to be attending his classes when he himself was there. I was always been a huge fan of his. He died in 2017, just about 4 months ago, at the age of 93. So, and he had a good life. Had a lot of trauma, also a lot of painful things happening in his life. But he lived his life the best possible way one can live, I would say. You know. I don't know him that closely, but I know him from the classes. I know a bit about his own life, his own story, and I think what he did with his life is very remarkable, and he's helped a lot of people. So then later on, other people took over the lead and took over the center, and because they are not as aware and alert, and this is not a personal affront, I am just saying they are not as alert as he was. They were not paying as much attention to the nitty-gritty, to the consequences of a certain behavior, certain reactions from the therapist. That then a lot of people started to drop out, including myself, and there were 2 incidences of death. So that's why I tell you all, you know, the way it is. These approaches they can be very helpful for some people. It can be very detrimental to some other people. And some therapists are not alert. Some therapists are not in a complete awareness process themselves, and then things go very wrong. So then projections start happening, and so on, and dependencies, and you know, very unconscious processes that are happening where therapists then acts out on the patient and those kind of things, you know, in a, you know, not not in a too physical way, but in an emotional way, because they are not aware. They're not aware of what's happening within themselves. That's why I say all of these approaches need to be combined into a much more potent and much safer and much more holistic overall therapy process. But what I experienced in primal therapy is very, very remarkable. I suffered also through it. I also suffered from the unconsciousness of the therapists. But particularly in these 2 years, from 1992 to 1994, that was I would call it the golden 2 years of primal therapy in history, not just for myself, but for the other people as well. We were about 70 trainees at that time at the center. It was just a training facility. It was not for clients. And as becoming therapists, we were also all test subjects of our own, when we were all in the process of healing ourselves at the same time. You cannot separate this, you know. A therapist will never be, ever, not even if he gets a license, he will never be on some kind of top plateau. He will always be continuing to heal himself or herself, and they can be more advanced. Hopefully they are. They can be at all times conscious and alert. Hopefully, you know, that's the ideal state. But they're constantly healing as they go. You know, you don't stop at a specific point in time. Just as you don't stop with knowledge gathering at any specific point in time. As long as we are in this live body, we are healing and we are growing and we are learning. So it's a continuous healing, growing, and learning process. And so for me, it was absolutely remarkable. I had a crush on on my therapist, Jaunty. He was absolutely fantastic. I thank you infinitively much from the bottom of my heart that, you know, Jaunty, that he didn't do a wrong move, that he didn't use that or something, or that he didn't, you know, that he stayed completely neutral in this whole time, that he knew exactly what to do. You know, I would be dragging myself through the room, and I would come into the office and say, Jaunty, oh, I need you. And he will say it, feel it. You know, even outside of the sessions, you know, where I wasn't even paying him, he would say to me, Nicola, say it. Jaunty, please. And then I was supposed to fill in the sentence, please love me. And I would say this several times. The feeling would come up. I would go in the room by myself, in the primer room, the soundproof room, and I would really go through this. Please love me. And the real feeling when you go through this in the present, not skip the present, you know, the focus on the guy, you know, and all of this. But when you go really into it, you will come to childhood. You will come to, Mommy, please love me. Love me as much as Fabi. And then you will come from there, if you really let yourself feel it, go to infancy. And when you go to infancy, there are no words. That's just the body. It's just the visceral expression. And the body will express in screams. And that's where the word primal scream comes from, because that's the primal scream, is when we go into infancy, because that's where the biggest trauma is sitting in us. Everything else just a compounding that comes all the way through our lives to the present. But the deepest pain, that's why, you know, there was such utter ignorance in the past particularly during the time of behaviorism, you know, Skinner and Watson and those type of criminal people. But I don't think they knew better. They were just very utterly, you know, ignorant and greedy for success. And then they didn't see the dogs and the children they experimented on. They didn't see it still happening to this day. People need to become aware of this. Still happening. Now those experiments are officially illegal, but people are still doing. I even saw it on YouTube. I couldn't believe it. They're still doing monkey experiments with this. This is just this is so heartbreaking, you know. But then Arjanov came in. He came in with his work somewhere in the 60s, I think late 60s. He was a psychoanalytical therapist. He had clients come to him, and he let people express the way they wanted to. He didn't interfere. He knew better. He had more insight. So through Arjanov's work, I think he was one of the leading people who basically broke the ice of behavior, the behavioristic phase from the 50s to the 60s and 40s, and people were very much in the dark ages then. And Arjanov's work was the breakthrough to change this behavioristic approach, and he came in with psychoanalytical approach, which was much more powerful, much more insightful. But the psychoanalytical talking approach stays very stuck in concepts and ideas and language. It's very stays on the surface. It doesn't go very deep. It's helpful, but not on such a physical level. So he let his patients do what they wanted to do, and some of his patients did amazing things. One guy twisted his whole body around over and over and over, and he said, I don't know, but I have to do this. And then he completely twisted himself into a complete knot, like into some kind of round ball or something. Then he came back out and he said, okay, now I straightened my back. My back problems are solved now. And it all had to do with something that happened in his past, something that had energetically tied itself to it, to a specific posture. That's why our entire body posture is tied to our childhood problems and pain and trauma. So, and then he had someone who actually started screaming, someone who actually went into that infancy stage. And that's where his work began. That's where his very intense research process began, because he wanted to find out what this is all about. And so the most remarkable man at a very important pivotal time started to bring out books to the world that would revolutionize the thinking of, how our minds and bodies are tied together. Then other people came, like Frederick Le Boyer with the underwater birth, and I think Arjanov knows him. Arjanov, his wife is French. They have been always half a year in France and half a year in LA. So for many years they have been always alternating between France and United States, and they have known all these very influential people in the field of psychology. And I'm absolutely grateful. I never met Dr. Le Boyer. I would love to meet him. I don't think he's still alive. But I'm extremely grateful that I got to meet Dr. Arthur Janov. So that's very, very, very amazing. And I discovered him because of my own child therapist. When I was 5 years old, I had a primal scream. It's a big story. I'm not going to get into it now. But she called her professor and he said, what shall I do? And he said, that's a primal scream. You need to read about this process, but you need to read The Primal Scream by Dr. Arthur Janov. And so that's how she got into Arthur Janov. And then she went there before I did, and I was still studying psychology, and it wasn't working out. So, and then she talked to them, and they said, okay, let her come here, and we'll accept her into this therapy process, and let her become a trainee as well. So that's how I got into it at age 26. And these 2 years were very, very vital. I got a lot out of it. So, but again, we need to create a wholesome approach from this, and we need to make something amazing out of all these different approaches and make revisions here and there and improvements. This is a constant improvement process. Nothing is set in stone. Even Rudolf Steiner said, who is the initiator of anthroposophy, he said that times are going to be changing and people are going to be using more modern technologies. We need to allow that in, as long as it is beneficial for the planet. So, and that is also my message for the world. So you guys take care. Bye bye.